welcome everybody to Girl, How'd You Get That Gig? Celeste, my partner, we're on episode 10. We hit double digits.
Yes. Awesome.
I know. It's just taking us a little while. We're gonna offer more episodes in 2024. That's our goal. I'm Amy G, along with my partner Celeste Gehring. We're really excited to have on this amazing individual. She's an 11-time Emmy Award winner, Alison Vigil, and she's the senior producer of regional coverage for the Colorado Rockies, kind of a nemesis of the San Francisco Giants, but we're women supporting women. So we're gonna let that go. We're gonna let go of the NL West rivalries and get down to business. Hi, Allison. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. This is really a cool concept. I think when I first was the name Girl, how'd you get that gig? I was thinking back about I didn't even know my job existed as a kid or any, so to say, people say, oh, did you always want to do that? And I was like, no, I didn't know it was a thing. So what a cool thing you guys are doing to really just try to get the word out about all the really cool jobs that are available for ladies who want to work in the sports industry.
Thank you so much. We love it. We love doing it, right, Amy? It's so much fun.
It is. Great. It's definitely a passion project. That's for sure. Yeah. And the funny thing is about what Allison just said, Celeste, is like her job existed. It just wasn't a woman that had it. So to see the evolution and the progress of where we're going as females in this industry is kind of the whole point, and to see where we can go. So
yeah, I think I can remember thinking that if you wanted to work in sports, you really either had to call the game or be a sideline reporter. That was it. I didn't realize how many amazing people it takes to put games on the air, and what a great career it could be. Because men or women are you're not really made aware of that part of the business. So
nobody sees behind the curtain, Allison.
Yeah. And we like it that way. But
it gets real scary behind that curtain, I'll tell you. The truck where Allison works. So I was always a little scared to go in there.
Get a little intense, yes.
Yes, it can. Yeah.
Well, Allison, before we start really talking about your career, we love to play a game. We call it Girl Gig Quick Pick, where it's basically an icebreaker. We're getting to know you a little bit better. So since you grew up in Philadelphia, we're going to start with that.
Okay.
You grew up in Downingtown. What movie is your hometown known for?
Well, The Blob was filmed in Downingtown. Did I nail it? Yes.
You nailed it.
To go for a Rocky connection, but no, Downingtown is home of The Blob. There's a diner that still exists, the Downingtown Diner, that you can go, and they had scenes that were filmed in that diner specifically.
I was impressed you thought of The Blob. I was like, wow.
Right away.
We're proud of it. Yeah.
As you should be. There's
like a scene where there's a scene, I think, where the police answer the phone and they say, Downingtown Police. And, everybody's like, yeah,
that's us. I love that. Well, Rocky, that was kind of obvious. It is hands down, Allison, my favorite movie all time. Rocky 1, though, where he loses.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure.
I appreciate the effort.
My dad can do a party trick where he can do the entire speech that Mickey gives Rocky before he goes out into the ring. It's his go-to party trick. Yeah, he can.
We need a recording of that.
I need that in my life. I need that. I love Mickey. And Rocky 3 wasn't, stellar regarding acting and stuff like that. But when Mickey dies, spoiler alert, Mickey dies in Rocky 3, you guys. I cry so hard when Sylvester Stallone's crying on top of him and his eyes all swollen because Mr. T crushed him. I'm like, I know all of them.
Yeah.
I should do a podcast on Rocky probably, but yeah. Okay. So here's another one for you. We're going to test your knowledge about where you're from. What famous pretzel chain began in Downingtown?
Is it Utz?
UTZ? It's not what I found.
Okay.
You better than we do.
We just Googled this stuff.
Auntie Anne's.
They did?
That's
so funny.
Now you're like, you guys are famous.
I didn't know that. I do remember when they came out, though. That was all the rage, right? I was like,
it's everywhere. It's in
Yeah.
every airport.
They need to make pretzel blobs, you know?
That's what I know. Why haven't
Right?
they done that?
Let's get on this.
Allison,
I
patent
didn't know
that.
that. That's interesting.
Just patent that right now.
All right, let's switch over to Colorado, Allison.
Okay.
Skiing or boarding?
I snowboard.
Nice.
Yes. I grew up skiing in Pennsylvania, and when I moved to Colorado, I didn't have enough money to bring my gear. So I found some really cheap snowboarding gear and was able to purchase that. And then I've been snowboarding ever since. So it was just an easy switch because I was 20 and didn't have a lot of money.
Such an expensive sport. Yeah.
And I heard when you first start snowboarding, it's really hard to like sit down and stand up
Yeah.
after a session.
My 15-year-old daughter is making the transition right now. She's been skiing all her life and she wanted to start. And yes, it's definitely your wrists are definitely hurting at the end of the day. But I feel like once you do learn to snowboard, it just kind of all clicks.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And it's like skiing, it's like you can just never perfect it. You're always trying to get better and better. And snowboarding, it's kind of like, oh, it clicks and I know how to do it and I can get down that. So that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Someday I'll share with you guys. My husband and I have been together 25 years, but we almost did not get married because I took him skiing and he had never skied before. And I'll leave it at that. I'll just leave it. And when we meet, well, I'll tell you the rest of the story. Okay. So if you're not skiing and you're in the lodge, what's your go-to bar drink, ski lodge drink?
Well, I like a red wine. It warms you up. Yeah. That's sort of my go-to drink wherever I'm at.
It works at all times.
Yeah. I mean, you see those people that order those like I'm sure you've seen them. The ski lodge Bloody Marys are impressive, right? They're always served with like little sliders, bacon, or like
it's always salad.
I always kind of look at it like I should get one of those, but also I'm super intimidated by that. So
it's like lunch and a drink all in one, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Insane.
I love it. All right.
Okay. Sports teams in Colorado. Your favorite: Broncos, Rockies, Avalanche, or Nuggets?
Well, it's hard not to be a Nuggets fan right now. They're awesome. They're super fun to watch. And it's just a really, really fun team. So that is right now, that's really fun. But the Rockies, I mean, that's who I cover. I've been covering this team for, oh my gosh, so long, and I love them and I love everything about them and I love the organization. And that's my heart for sure.
Yeah. They're a good group. You have a good group there. Yeah.
It's a good group of people for sure.
Okay, last question. And this one may be tough. So you can not do it if you don't have to, but we're curious. All right. So this is kind of like imagine situation, imagine scenario. You get to make a dream team, Allison, of the best interviews. Four total. So we want you to choose your favorite or who you'd want to interview or what's been your favorite interview from an athlete of the Broncos, the Rockies, the Avalanche, the Nuggets.
Okay, well, I mean, Nikola Jokic is hands down the funniest interview in all the land and is so great. And he has to be part of the group for sure.
There's one.
My favorite Rocky interview is probably a little bit different, but Carlos Gonzalez is like my favorite baseball player to sit in a room with and just chat. He is so funny. He is so kind and he says the most thoughtful things. And I would 100% put him on that list.
Okay.
I think if you're going to go Broncos, you have to go Peyton Manning. I mean, he's just funny. He's great. And he will hold his own there. And then if I may just say Peter Forsberg for the Avs, because I used to have the biggest crush on him back in the early 2000s. They were winning the cup and he would just skate with his hair flowing.
Be professional. Be professional.
I really loved Peter Forsberg back in the day. So I guess that would be my
There's your dream team.
There's my dream team of Denver athletes.
You did good. She did good.
Really good. Yeah.
Yeah. There's probably better answers, but I've had like personal experiences with those athletes. So I feel like that always sways you, right? Like I know they are going to be great in the moment. So
Right.
go.
Yeah. Okay, let's get to it, Celeste.
Let's get to it. All right. Since you grew up near Philly, obviously a big, huge sports town, who were your sports heroes? And did you play sports? Where did your love of sports come from?
I think that so my family were just like super, I think my love of sports was super evolving, right? Um, I, my family was one of those families that like we would eat Sunday dinner at 1 o'clock because the Eagles played at 4 o'clock, or we would eat Sunday dinner at 11 o'clock because the Eagles played at 2 o'clock. You know, like everything sort of revolved around what the Eagles were doing that week. And some of my greatest memories, I think, specifically with my dad, was going to the ballpark. And I sort of came of age, like 15 years old when the Phillies were the crazy 1993 team that just went bananas and sort of really found my love of baseball in that time. I played rugby in college, and those relationships and those teams that I was on definitely fueled and inspired how I feel passionately about teams and about what a team's trying to accomplish, and their stories that go along with it. But I mean, so many things, right? There's just so many moments I can point back to where it just hits you in a certain way. I've always loved how it can bring you together. When the Eagles won the Super Bowl, I've never seen my mother so happy. Like I don't know. I don't know. I think she was that happy when she had us too, but she was just,
I don't think so. I don't think so.
It's just like the way it brought everybody together and the way it brings my family together is just really special. And I don't take that for granted. You know, I love that. I love that part of sports. And I sort of I actually grew up more of a musician and an actress a little bit. And one thing that I really always loved about sports was that like there's always just a winner and a loser, right? Like there was no debating it. You either won the race or you didn't, or you scored the goal or you didn't. And I know there's debates in sports and all the time, and you can debate all kinds of things. So I guess, but I always felt like a lot of times in some of the things I was doing, it was so much was left up to someone else's opinion of you. And I always just really gravitated to something where, you know what, there was no negotiating. This person won the spot, and and that's, you know, I always sort of loved that.
Very clear cut, just defined. Yeah. No participation trophies. Come on. No, I'm kidding. I'm going to get canceled for saying that. Oh you mentioned, so this is off of our little script. I love finding out stuff. Musician and actress. What can you play? And you know, what drew you to acting?
I was a piano player and a trumpet player growing up. I remember the day I told my mom I wasn't going to play piano anymore, and she said, "You're going to regret this," and I do. So, yeah. And then I just did I was just really into the theater, the school plays, and all of that stuff. I just found a real home in that environment. And really,
what's your most memorable role?
Well, probably my senior year of high school, we did West Side Story, and I was anybody's in that, and it was a very special. The whole thing was the whole cast and everything about that production was super special, and I will never forget it. Great time in my life.
Cool. What a great soundtrack, West Side Story too.
Oh, yes.
The best.
So what did you study in college then once you got there?
Yeah, I was a communications major, and I really do love storytelling. I think that's part of what I love about baseball so much, right? Is it's sort of this one sport where the art of storytelling is more important than anywhere else. I was always really drawn to, you know, the great voices of the game, the Ernie Harwell, the Vin Scully, the Harry Callis. Like you know, if I get down and I want to, you know, I don't know. I could go listen to Vin Scully's call of Hank Aaron hitting 715 over and over again. Like they're just moments that trigger. I've always been really passionate about that. I thought it would probably lead me to more of a newsroom environment because that's what I thought. That's really all I thought there was, right? And you would work maybe in a sports newsroom or something like that. I did do my internship for NBC in Philadelphia. It was a great experience. But also it was the summer of Columbine had happened that year. There were some key triggering moments for me that I had to experience in a newsroom that I started realizing I don't know if this is really what I want to do. And then was super fortunate to be able to find sports and sort of grow in that environment.
That's really a couple things here. Ernie Harwell, Celeste, this is going to bring me back to you. So Celeste and I go back to 2001 is when we met at Fox Sports. And one of my jobs was to like find video and calls for different regions across the country. And I would have to get Ernie Harwell calls. And I loved when I was assigned to get that. I'm like, oh, I'll do Ernie. I love Ernie too. Rest in peace.
We had a quick sidebar. We did a story on the 2007 Rockies, and Clint Hurdle was the manager at the time. And Ernie Harwell is a friend of his. So we were looking for a narrator for our documentary and just kind of casually asked Clint if he might call in a favor, and he did. And so I had to tape with him on scripts that I wrote that he voiced, and it was one of the coolest experiences of my life to hear him bring something you write to life like that. It just was, yeah, it was
so envious. He was one of my favorite people to listen to when we were hunting down those calls, Celeste. And then what you mentioned about being in news, I went the same route, and I'll never forget, we had a year of like multiple plane crashes. Like JFK Jr.'s plane went down, a plane went down off of like Southern California. It was like an Alaska Airlines. And you know this, Allison, when you work in news and a flight goes down, you get the manifest and you get all of the passengers and the names. And I would see these blocks of the same last name. So it meant an entire family had been lost in this. And I was like, that was my moment of, this is not going to be for me. I cannot do hard news any longer when it's stuff like this. And that changed me. And I went into consumer news and then sports, but I totally understand that. So
yeah, and it's very like eye-opening, right? Because you're like, oh, this is kind of what I thought I was going to do. And you're sort of like, I guess I got to go back to the drawing board. And so it was really finding sports in that way was really great for me, because it was able to sort of bring passions together and keep me in the same sort of industry I'd set out.
So when you had to go back to the drawing board and you found sports, let's start there and kind of take us through your path, because you really are this true example of what we're trying to convey to people listening to the podcast about a path, and step by step by step by step, kind of increasing your responsibility and your title and your role. So will you kind of set that up for us as to where you started in sports and how you got to where you are?
Yeah, so I started as a production assistant. I was really fortunate to come to Denver, and they were just launching the Rocky Mountain Sports Report at the time. So it was just really great timing on my part, in that they needed to hire a lot of entry-level positions. And that's sort of, and we got to cover the Nuggets, the Avs, the Broncos at that time, and the Rockies, of course. And it was just I spent maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 years with this small group of people that just became family to me. Some of them I still work with, some of them I don't, but it was a really, really wonderful experience. And then, of course, they started getting rid of this news report thing and sort of solely just doing games and pre and post game shows. And when that happened, I sort of gravitated a little more to the Rockies side and to baseball. And I had a really great mentor in that sort of side of the business that I really wanted to work alongside and work for, that was pretty crucial in helping me get to my next steps. But I think there was a lot of sacrifices for sure at the beginning. I think in hindsight, I did things for a lot less than I was probably worth. I think it took me a little while to realize what I was worth and realize what I was bringing to the table. I always sort of, I'm probably taking a left turn, but I always sort of tell this when people talk about like, oh, well, people ask about like, oh, well, how was it being a woman? I really had to sort of evolve in the sense that at the beginning of my career, I was very focused on like, I can do anything just as good as this man can do it. You're not going to know if it's a girl calling your replays or your cameras or your graphics, or if it's a boy. You're not going to know the difference. I was really on my high horse of like, anything you can do, I can do. But over time, as I realized what I personally bring to the table as the human that I am, being, and part of that being a woman, part of that being a mother, that there's value in me doing things differently, and I shouldn't negate those things just because I'm trying to get ahead. So I've really sort of come full circle on things I did early in my career just to sort of get to the next step, but then in hindsight, really noticing how important it is for anybody to bring their individual perspective to whatever it is that they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Which is
think,
what sets us apart. It's the uniqueness of your approach versus my approach, even though we're both females in sports, or Celeste's approach. And yeah, I think that's really important.
yeah, I think so many women start off. Go ahead.
Sorry.
I think so many women start off that way too. I know I started off that way, just, hey, I want to be as good as the men in my group. I want to make sure, they don't know who's writing this, who's doing this. So I think so many women, don't you, Amy, start off with their career like that, of really just comparing themselves instead of just really getting into that, hey, I'm going to do me, right? When they're actually going into the industry, it's really comparing themselves to the male dominant industry that we're in.
There's a lot of factors there. I think we're all in the same boat. But when you said that you didn't probably get what you were worth, I mean, I'm still there, right? Like trying to figure out your value. I have a lot of ways I want to go with this with you, because advice on that subject, I think, is priceless. We're not taught as girls growing up. It's starting to happen. Like, I feel like I'm doing that with my daughter regarding, this is your time. This is who you are. Is it worth it to you? And not just talking about what your worth is, but what's worth it to you. Do you want to make the sacrifices? Do you want to put in the long hours and do the grind? Because I think in the sports industry, anybody who's going to make it has to be able to deal with the grind. But in general, it's, how do you feel you've gotten to the point of figuring out your value? And is it an ongoing journey?
Yeah, it's super ongoing. We were talking about Jenny earlier. Jenny and I sort of have a running joke where every time we're feeling a little bit less than, we always sort of go, thank you for the opportunity.
Right.
But
I have a job.
As a little reminder of like, it's not just about opportunity anymore, and I think back to like, some of the jobs I would do for free, or just to be in the area or be in the room, or the time that I put in, that I don't think a lot of, gosh, what a disparity, right? To people who might not be able to do that, or might not have the financial means to be able to put in that extra time to just to get that opportunity. It is so ongoing, Amy. I still don't know the answer to that. I still question those things. I think I read once, like, women just don't negotiate. They just don't want to, everything is like, great, yes, I'll take that. And I tried to even like channel that, and I still find myself it's still a struggle.
Like following it.
Yeah, not following through.
I think and I think it's so hard, but I also think, that starts with all of us, right? That have been in the industry for a while too, where I've had multiple people, and I know everybody in this group has, of people coming to me and saying, I'm going to work for you for free. What can I do in all of this? And I'm like, no, you are not working for me for free. I value your time and your energy. And what happens usually, and we all know this from being in those jobs, is they get resentful. I got resentful after a while. I'm like, I am doing this for free. What is my payoff? What am I doing? And I don't want people working for me that would get resentful of me taking advantage of their time and energy. So I think, that's one thing as women that we can really do, that have been in the industry for a while, is making sure they understand, like, we do value your time and energy, right? When should you ask for a raise? When should you ask for more money? Like, what is your salary range on Glassdoor? Know the information, know the research, so you can step up to the table and negotiate.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a good point. That's such a good point. And that is all just about having more women in the room, right?
Mm,
Like I've never had to negotiate with a woman. I've never really technically worked for a woman. And I know it's becoming more and more as, over the past 10 years, it feels, it's definitely growing, but still in those positions of the ones making the decisions about like what's going to be important on our broadcast, what's going to, how we're going to value our people. Those are still, I'm still reporting to a lot of men in those areas. So that's the other thing too, is getting women in positions where they're the ones that can help foster those decisions.
100%.
Great point.
And, oh man, I keep waiting. I keep waiting.
I just had a female boss for the first time 6 months ago. I
Really?
just moved over to a female boss. Yeah, it's been great.
I have a female boss too with the Giants now.
It's awesome.
Chief marketing officer. So that's boss. Which I
Yeah.
love. Okay, so somebody comes to you and says, Allison, I want to be the senior producer of regional coverage of a baseball team. What do you do? And then, like, what were the jobs that led you to this job? Like, what would be their path?
Yeah, so there's so many. So
Or your path?
yeah, I always say to everybody, like, don't be afraid of any job like, if even like you want to be on air, don't be afraid of the radio, don't be like, there's so many things that can get you to this point. And there's so many jobs in the television truck as far as like graphics or tape machines or, score bug operators or even in the booth with stage managers and things like that to get involved that are very sort of entry level that can get you moving into that direction. I definitely came from a graphics background and an editor background. So those are two great starting points. But I think the biggest piece of advice is just nothing is really, as get paid for it, but nothing's really beneath you, right? There's so much to learn and understand about what goes into a television broadcast. So do all of it. And when you do start rising up, I feel like experiences that I've had in so many of those positions have really helped me be better in the position that I'm at now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and you talked about doing scorebook, doing graphics, and then editing, right? And then moving into producing. What really drew you into the production role?
Well, I really do thrive. Producing games and directing games for that matter. And my director at Rockies is a woman also. And I think we're like the only all woman front bench in like all of regional sports, which is really,
You are.
so
Yeah.
but it's just a high. There's such a thrill of being in those two chairs and calling the shots and deciding what's going to happen next on a show. And when the game is dictating everything, but then it's coming to you to make all of these quick decisions. I mean, it's a rush and I love it. I love that rush. I love the way I feel. Nothing feels better than a walk-off home run and nailing the cut and nailing the replays and nailing the walk-off interview and everything's moving so quickly and you get done and you just like want to run through a wall, like your energy level is just, and I love that. And maybe that's something that you get maybe from playing sports too, or
Watching Rocky.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah.
Tell me you don't want to go fight somebody after
is.
Rocky and think that you could
win. But it's that it has always drawn me to it. I just love the energy of that. And I love being the one to say what's going to happen next.
You're the boss, which I love. So I totally know what you do because I have your counterpart at the Giants and had him for 13 seasons and Jeff Kuiper. Yeah. But how would you, in layman's terms, explain what you do to somebody who says, what does a producer of a baseball game do?
I feel like I've been trying to explain it to my mom for like 20 years.
There you go. Pretend we're your mom.
She's still like, what? So the best thing I can say is when they're talking to you, when the voice, main play-by-play person is Drew Goodman, analyst in the booth, my sideline reporter. When they're talking to you, I'm talking to them. So it is my job to make sure everybody's getting in and out of commercial breaks. Everybody knows what's going to happen next on their screen. We're going to replace here. We're going to this graphic. You're going to have to read this sales read here. You're going to go down to the reporter here. The reporter is going to talk about this. It's my job to sort of make sure everybody's just on the same page and following the same script. Now it's live sports, so of course your script is going to go left and right and left again. But there's a general idea of what the show is going to look like, and I'm the one sort of keeping that on track. And I always sort of say, like, between the director and I, so I'm the producer, and so like it's easier to describe in football. Eric and I always say this. It's like when the whistle blows and the play dead, it's the producer's show, right? It's my show now to either fill as needed or to get to something as needed. And then once they line back up, on the line of scrimmage, it goes back to the director's show. Now it's live action. Now the director's calling the shots. So it's just sort of, it's a little easier to describe in football than baseball, because baseball's so, those moments can happen so much faster. But it's this sort of just,
you get to squeeze stuff in between
it. It's like we just did 45 minutes of nothing, and now but it's this sort of handoff that we have, just moving back and forth between us to basically bring you the best coverage we can, so that you're not missing any of the game action and you get to watch the game as best you can. But also getting to, as a regional, and you, Amy, you can probably attest to this, as a regional sports net, your product is the home team. You want to really drive home the good stories that you have. You want to help fans, you want to bring these players home to fans in a way that you might not worry so much at a national level or not. But this is your home team, and we broadcast that way for sure.
And like, I know Jeff is always like, on this date in Giants history, and there's like a running list of famous moments that happened and anniversaries. And that's a lot of like pulling in the fan base to remind them like how great the Giants have been or the Rockies have been. But then he's trying to balance the sales side of all the sponsorships and things that have been sold. He's got to find time to get that in. And I use traffic cop very loosely because there's so many moving parts that a producer has to be the kind of a puppet master of and stay on top of all of it. But I was always like, how did he remember? I mean, I know he's got like some kind of spreadsheet or something, like he's not just remembering off the top of his head, but I'd be like, oh, that's right, this happened 25 years ago, and Jeff's all over it, roll the video. And I'm assuming you have to do all that kind of stuff too.
Yes, absolutely. And same thing. We have like our dates that come up all the time, and you're right back in it. But I think probably one of my favorite things to like put together is I love covering like an MLB debut with a whole like family. That's probably my most favorite time of things to cover, and it just never gets old. Every time it's just as special for, it doesn't matter how high of a prospect they are,
matter what place you're in, doesn't matter.
It's
where the team's at. It's a good vibe.
It's always a great vibe. So like paying attention to those things and knowing what's going to be special for fans of the team, knowing the stories. Who doesn't like to talk about Todd Helton? Everybody, you can't talk about Todd Helton enough in this city. So any moment you get to do that. But yeah, it's just picking all of those things and making and deciding things. And that goes back a lot, I think, to like our point, what we were talking about with like doing it from your own perspective of like knowing that this might be important to you, because that's, what I come from, and that's the perspective that I want to bring. And that's why that stuff's so important to have different voices sharing that.
In tough seasons, debuts save the day.
Yes.
Because you're having a lot of them usually.
Yeah.
I mean, last year, I don't know how many debuted with the Giants. And I was like, thank God for Patrick Bailey.
I know the September call-up thing really threw us for a loop. I'm like, what do you mean we're not getting 10 new players?
That was going to be at least a couple games of good vibes. Like,
I love when you get like the high school coach or something in the stands, or like it's just Oh, every
All
time.
these people have put all this work into this
Because
person.
it's so much more than just that player. I mean, it's
Mhm.
everything, right? You need so many
Mhm.
things to go right to get yourself into the big leagues. And whether it's your family or the coaches around you, it's you have some sort of network that got you there. And I
Yep.
love it.
Yep.
Besides baseball, you also produce basketball and football. What's it like going through those different transitions with the seasons? I mean, is it exhausting? What are the challenges? And how does it keep it fun switching to different sports?
Yeah, the college basketball scene can be a bummer with travel, that's for sure. I've definitely gotten stuck in Boise, Idaho a few times.
Mhm.
Um,
Oh, Celeste is
I'm
from
from Idaho.
Idaho.
Uh-oh, we got to cut
There's
the
our
interview.
viral moment. That's going out. That's going to be a tease. We're
with
teasing
all
that.
I mean, it was a great time, but I've just
When
been
you get stuck in Idaho, sorry, Celeste.
Things to do.
You should have called Celeste. She knows
no,
all the hot spots in
no,
those
I didn't
lines.
mean it like that. I like to be stuck in Boise.
Don't you have
Um,
one stoplight in your hometown, Celeste?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
what
No,
is your
no.
hometown?
And
Uh,
we just talked about this the other day when I first met Celeste. I thought it was so funny because she's like, I'm from Idaho. And, she was the other tall girl in the room and she played basketball at LSU and I played volleyball at Davis and I migrated towards her. And I'm like, oh, are you guys potato farmers? And she's like, yes, we are. Like, oh, probably not so funny. Not sure we're going to be friends.
Everyone always says it. Everyone.
I was not unique. Anyway, keep going. When you get stuck in Boise, Idaho.
Boise's a great
Yes,
town.
move it
Boise's
on.
a great town. Yes. So that part, but I really love college basketball. I mean, there's no greater environment than and I did the Mountain West for a long time. So I mean, some of those environments I know are super grand. But we have our share of great environments in the Mountain West as well. And going to the pit, going to Logan, Utah, those are just some great places to do games. The energy is amazing. And it's just fun. I just always feel like in college basketball, they're just really I mean, sometimes in professional sports, it can be a little bit like we're a necessary evil, right? I'm the person that you have to talk to because
Mhm.
we're putting you on TV. But in like college sports, it always feels like they're just so happy you're there and covering them and paying attention. And it
Still
feels good.
innocent.
Yeah.
So innocent.
I'm actually not like, so I love college basketball. I'm not a huge fan of doing football. I love football. I love to watch football, and I do it because but it's like you work all week long for
Mhm.
this big broadcast, and if something doesn't go right, then I just dwell on it for like 2 weeks.
Mhm. Mhm. I hear
Until
that.
you
Baseball, you got to turn it around the next
got to
day.
turn it on. I
Yeah.
love that. Yep, I love it.
Forget about it.
Yeah,
That
you
makes a
have to.
lot of sense.
That's why I always say in the truck, I'm like, we're a tarp. You're a tarp. Let it go. Let it go.
With all these seasons, when do you go on vacation? I know you're a mom of three and I want to ask you about that, but like when do you get downtime?
Yeah, so I just took a whole month off in December. And I did two college football games this year. I covered for a friend of mine at Nuggets for a little bit, but I don't do too much in the off season anymore now that I've gotten to a place of doing so many Rockies games. I mean,
Mhm.
it really is a lot of games. And you really do need to decompress. And I've learned I think when I was a young mother, I thought kind of like, oh yeah, you get these kids to school and then they start, you get time back. I thought that anyway, but that now that I have teenagers, I'm learning that that's really not the case. I really do love
Important
my
being
husband's a
home.
teacher.
Yeah.
It really is, they only need you like once every like 6 days. But man, when they do,
To feed
you
them.
know, yeah.
Oh, the kids got to eat
Yeah.
for 6 days.
No, but yeah, so I've really enjoyed sort of reconnecting with them in the off season, and I try
Mhm.
to really take the time to do that.
What can
So,
you share about colleagues' assumptions of, being a mother in the industry?
mhm.
Yeah, because I got to be honest, coming up, I did not know any women that had kids. Like any of the women I knew in the industry had chosen not to have children or had left the industry because they had children. So I did not have a lot of people that I worked with or for that that were having families. And that I really take a lot of pride in being somebody that has been able to navigate that and is now being able to sort of make changes in the way we do that. You know, I just had a really great conversation with a young gal who's thinking about having kids and like wondering how you do it. And it feels really good to tell her like, oh, it's possible. Like you can do this if you want to do it. And maybe everybody doesn't want to do it, but I have been told a lot in my career, oh, you're not going to want that job. You have kids at home. I mean, my whole life.
Just deciding for you, right?
Yeah, there have been a lot of people in my life that have made decisions or not approached me with a job or, you know, just make assumptions like that. Like, well, you can't do that. You have kids at home.
She's not going to want to do that.
Yeah, it's a lot of that. And I think too, like, I joke with everybody about this. When I walk into a truck and people find out I have kids, it's the first thing I get all the time is who's taking care of them?
Oh yeah, I love that. Oh, your husband's babysitting them?
Who's taking care of them? And I'm like, well, so I started like asking my male colleagues who have children. I'm like, do people ask you who takes care of your kids? They're like, no.
No. And yeah, and it's just assumed, but the best part is like, oh, I'm in the same boat. So Grace was 5 weeks old and Zach was 3 in my first season in 2008 covering the Giants. And they'd say, oh, is Paul babysitting the kids so you can be at this game and work? And it was so hard to not blow up and just be like, what do you mean babysit? And I got to laugh a little bit about the gal that you just said you talked to, because there's where I go. You said, yeah, I talked to her about how to have kids. And I'm like the bees and the birds and the bees, or how to have a family and keep this job. Where are we going, Allison? But to my point, it's like Paul participated in making the children. He can take care of the children. That is part of his responsibility. And that is where I really think our generation of moms have come to have the expectation of their partner to really be 50-50 in this, whatever that looks like. With the mom part too, Allison, I'm curious, based on my own experience having kids, that seemed to really bond me with players, coaches, bosses who also had children. And it was always a relatable topic with my broadcasters, with Kruk and Kipe. Like their kids were older than mine, but it unified me in the industry. And I'm really glad that I had that experience. Well, did you have any bonding over being a mom in
that's a really great point. I don't know that early on that I did, really. I think that early on it felt so it almost felt like I was hiding that part of me as to not want people to know that maybe I had to like get home and do stuff. I told my kids this recently. I was like, I feel so silly that I thought that way. I remember bringing them on a trip and like they were getting a little nutty because they were toddlers and we were in San Diego and I was like, oh my God, we got to get back to the room before somebody sees these crazy toddlers running around. I mean, I just felt like I had to hide this like part of me.
I get that.
It really was not an issue for anybody else. All of my counterparts were at the time were male, and they all had kids, but they all had partners that stayed at home and took care of those kids while they traveled and did that. So we just weren't in the same situation, and it wasn't really a super bonding experience. And I mean, you start feeling guilty about stuff, right? Like somebody makes it sounds so silly, but somebody will make a comment to you about, I mean, I remember being in a truck when a woman actually said to me, oh, I can't believe you have kids and do this job. I only had one for that reason. Like, I can't believe you have 3. I had one because you can't do this and have more than one child.
Right.
And it's like this like stinger, like you're just like,
Like, are you doing your kids a disservice because
Yeah,
you
right.
work as well? And you're like, and she probably meant it in like I couldn't have done it. You're amazing, but that's not how they say it. They're like, why,
Right.
wow,
Well, because I think
wow,
we
you have three kids?
we internalize all this like mom guilt anyway, right? It's
Totally
already a
do.
factor. So like anything somebody might say just triggers me or, will trigger me. And I've come a long way in it where
Yeah.
I'm much more comfortable and, proud of what we've been able to do. And of course, my partner is incredible. My family is incredible. My friends are incredible. It takes a village.
Yeah. I do remember being very afraid when I was at Fox Sports Net Bay Area to tell my boss I was pregnant because I was a freelancer. I was a contractor, and I was like, he's not going to hire me anymore. I'm
I
out.
remember that. Yeah. I remember talking about that with you.
Yeah, I talked to Celeste. I'm like, Paul
Yeah,
knocked me up.
I had to,
What am I going to do?
I had my third baby during baseball season, and I basically like had to get it approved by people I worked with that I could take this job and that they were going to cover me while I was gone, or so that I could have this baby. Like it wasn't like just to have, yeah.
Yeah.
And those were conversations. And I don't think they were ill-intended conversations. It just was like, I was just I think I was the first one that needed time off in baseball season.
Imagine that. The first mother that, the first working woman to have children. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do?
Right.
The Giants didn't have a maternity policy until Stacy Slaughter, who was like Larry Bear's right-hand woman forever. She got pregnant. And she's like, we don't have any plan in place, any maternity leave. And so that was developed in like the 90s, early 2000s. I'm not even sure how old our kids are, but that's just not that long ago.
Right.
So everything you said resonates with me, especially the like, I can't believe I used to think that, but that's exactly how we all thought. We were afraid. We were basically told you have to do one or the other. You can't do it both. And our generation has been that merge hybrid. Yes, you can. So, and you just figure it out.
You just figure it out.
Yeah.
And speaking about figuring it out, how do you find your voice and help with the work-life balance for mothers? Like what advice would you have to women about finding their voice and having work-life balance?
Yeah, well, I think you really need to stand up for yourself. I remember I was with my kids at a pool early on in my career, and I got a phone call from somebody I was working for at the time who was wondering if I could come in to the office. And I just was like, oh my gosh, I got to go. And I called my husband and had him come to the pool, and I left the pool to go take this meeting, right? Which ended up being kind of a silly thing anyway. You really need to set boundaries and stand up for yourself. We are in this together. It should not be an embarrassing situation to have to go deal with a sick child or have to pick up kids and take a phone call from the road because you're, in the kids' parking lot at the school. Like, those things need to be they just need to be normalized. It's part of, it's just part of having a family and doing the job.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I was doing an interview with a young lady who we were on a Zoom call, and she excused herself with me to like pick up her baby. And I remember being like, yes, I'm so happy that you just, yes, like
that's more important right now.
Yeah. And I think that we can be better at knowing that and respecting each other for it. And again, it comes back to women being in positions of power to say, no, I get this for you. I felt, really, we had one of our reporters who had two babies that, I was sort of managing her at the time over the last few years. And I felt really good about being in a position of saying like, she was talking about when she was going to come back from maternity. And I was like, you know what? You might have this baby and never want to come back. You might have this baby and say, I want to come back next week.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Just like, let's not put any like hard lines on when you're coming back from maternity. I remember her looking at me like, oh my gosh.
Thank you.
Right. Mm-hmm. Like, thank you for saying that. And that's just women knowing what it's like.
The situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
You know what I find interesting too is now that I really feel we're this generation, because my mom worked, but she worked as a teacher's aide. And so her schedule mimicked our schedule, always in school. So while she worked, she made sure she was available for, every vacation, every summer, all of that. Where I think moms today have full blown careers and all this. But what I'm finding is that the men that I work with now have these same issues of, I can't come in today because I've got my kids. I've got to pick my child up at 3. Like, they are sharing, again, that responsibility, and it's becoming much more common conversation to have a family obligation, whether you're male or female, and have it be understood. Or I can meet with you around these times because I have family stuff. And so many men that I work with drop that on me. Like, we need to meet this week. Here's what I have. I've got kids, yada, yada, yada. And it's like, okay, no problem. And I think that's a huge leap forward that dads are going through this as well.
Because isn't that what we have to do as women? We have to get the men to understand and say it.
Understand what it feels like.
And then when they say it,
it's so true. It's so true.
But you're right. It is becoming a more, it is cool. It's really great, I think, too, for men to have more paternity rights and to be understood. It's just, it's better for everybody.
It is.
Yeah. And actually take the paternity time, which is great.
Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, Alison, back to you. In 2021, you were part of the first all-women's MLB broadcast team. What was that experience like? I know you talked about it earlier, but I mean, you were the first.
I wasn't on it. I'm pissed.
Maybe you're going to say that.
It was so awesome. Well, first of all, Angie Mentink in Seattle is just an incredible human. She is so cool. And I have always wanted to work with her. So when this opportunity sort of presented itself, it was just a no-brainer. And I think what was really interesting about what we did that was maybe a little different that what some of the other broadcasts did that have tried to do things is that we really wanted our front bench, the producer and director, to be women as well. And I think that took it a little bit of a step further, but working with those women, specifically Jenny Kavnar and Angie Mentink in those roles, and hearing them call a game and just be so knowledgeable and so in tune to what was going on, and just the way they nailed it. It was just I was so proud of the broadcast. We really tried to celebrate women all throughout. I didn't, it was funny. I thought, well, is doing all these stories on women that play baseball, is that is that really the intention? And I kind of went back and forth on, is that what we're trying to do? And finally, I just let it go. I was like, yes, this broadcast is going to be more than just calling the game. We are going to celebrate women from all over. And we told so many really great stories about women in the Mariners organization and the Rockies organization and all throughout baseball. And I'm really, really proud of it. And then just the experience of working with those ladies was awesome.
I know. It was so fun to see that happen. It meant something to all of us that work in the industry. And your organization in particular, if you take it down to the Rockies, as you mentioned, you work with a female director. It's Erica, right? Ferrero. And then you've got Jenny Kavnar, who does play-by-play. She was one of the first women in baseball to be a play-by-play announcer. You've already talked a little bit about that environment, but what can you share about the importance of those relationships for you and being in that environment on the daily, and what that could mean for other organizations and other teams if you're setting that tone?
Yeah, that's so interesting. Sometimes I think we joke about it in Denver that we live in a bit of a bubble and we forget, because we have such a strong group of women here, from in all positions. And even within the Rockies organization, they have a very well represented group of women there too. And we laugh, we'll go into, we forget, we go into other trucks or we go into other cities and we start giggling like, oh yeah, this is normal. We forget.
We're the weird ones.
Relationships. I mean, look, Jenny Kavnar was going to be Jenny Kavnar with me without me. She's so talented and so incredible. But I do believe there's an element of women being in her corner and women saying, nope, you're ready for this. That sort of was the pushing point to get her to where she wanted to go next. And that's so important, having allies and having supportive women in your, I mean, and this goes back, I mean, you guys both talked about playing D1 sports. Those friendships, those relationships that you build when you're working towards something, like I equate those relationships a lot to what it's like being on this team of women, just really cheering for each other and wanting each other to be to next step be the best that they can be.
It's so true. Don't you think, Celeste, your background as an athlete?
So true. Yeah.
Not that you have to have been an athlete to work in sports. I just think it's definitely it gives you an idea, one, of what the athletes you're covering are going through, but that camaraderie that you're talking about, Allison, in that, you know, you always want the best for your teammate. You want to win, right? And what that looks like, you know, in our world of a career versus an actual sport and a game is progress. Winning is progress.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah.
And speaking of progress, where do women need to go, do you think? What do you hope is better or different for the next generation of women?
Yeah, I guess, well, I hope that there's more women making decisions. I hope that there's more people of color making bigger decisions. I just hope that I see a lot of progress being made in our TV trucks and even on air, but I don't see a lot of progress being made when we're really talking about the decision-making part. And I would like to see that sort of even out a little bit more, and with more women in the room to be able to field those kind of conversations to help young coming up.
I agree with that. I think there's more diversity coming through the ranks, the lower entry level positions, kind of like into the associate producer ranks. But to your point, there are no decision makers really like elevating up into those levels yet.
Yeah. And there's some, we're getting there.
Yes, we are.
You just gotta keep talking, right? Like, this is so cool what you guys are doing with this. This is such a unique space to really, just talk about it. I feel like that makes a lot of people not feel alone or shy to say anything.
Will you tell everyone you know about our podcast then, so we can start getting better?
I have like 7 followers now.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll take it.
Yes, we will take it.
7 would be a huge number for us. Usually we get 1, we're like, oh my God, we're at 48. Okay, we're going to wrap it up. We're going to wrap it up with you because we've taken too much of your time already, and this is your off season. I feel so guilty. I'm like, we got to get her in the off season, but the off season is tough to get people who work baseball because they don't want to do stuff. They want their time, which is understandable. But just in general, it's a 2-part question. So a smaller piece is maybe best piece of advice for somebody who wants to go into producing, but the bigger picture is just best piece of advice you've ever had, like in general, to help you in your career or in life.
Yeah. I mean, for producing in particular, I think it would go back to really just trying everything. There's no shortage of jobs that can help prepare you to be a producer. All of them can help get you there. And try everything, because you just don't know what the right fit is. I think at the very beginning of this podcast, I didn't even know that this producer of regional sports was a thing when I entered my career, and learned about it and tried things and then was able to discover it and grow in it. So, don't be naive to think like there's one route for me. I tell side people that want to be on air all the time, I'm like, you need to know what a producer is going through before you're gonna, that's gonna make you better in this role. So try everything. And honestly, the best, I say this a lot, you got to be kind. It's a really small business, and with good people that will treat you really well in the end. So much of it is networking and finding people that want to work for you and want to work with you. You'll work with somebody in San Francisco, you know, one week, and all of a sudden you see them in Montana at a football game, you know, 3 months later. It's just, it's a small network of good people, and so treat people with respect and kindness, and that will come back to help you in the end.
Amen.
That's
It's
all
so
right.
true. I'm always telling people that. I'm like, you're gonna run into that person. And
Yeah.
you are very nice to
Again.
them. And now
Mhm.
you have a reputation.
Yeah, reputation
And we
become
all
real.
talk. We talk.
It is. It's definitely a business that's word of mouth, right? You
Totally.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't even count how many times it's been asked, have you worked with Amy? Have you worked with Jenny? What are they like? Are they nice? Are they, you know, are they helpful? Or, you know, it's like, good. I hope my reputation. But Allison came on our show, so Jenny likes me, so I'm good there. Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah.
All right, Miss Alison Vigil, thank you so, so much for the time.
Yes,
And
thank
you're only
you.
a couple of weeks away from spring training, but enjoy your downtime.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, you can go ahead and hop off, my dear, and we'll look forward to watching the Rockies games because we know now who's behind all the magic happening on the
Yeah.
broadcast.
Making the calls.
Oh, that was Allison. Oh, okay, that was Allison.
We know her.
Thank you guys
Thank
so much.
you.
That wasn't bad. I
Not
was like,
bad.
oh, what was that?
Told you we're not scary.
You were great.
Yeah, I hope it went all right. I'll probably see you in San Fran, Amy,
I hope to. Yeah,
coming your
for sure.
way pretty early on. So
I love it. Okay, all right. That has been
Thanks.
Alison Vigil, episode 10 of Girl, How'd You Get That Gig? And I'm so excited, Celeste. We just keep rolling. And so who's coming on episode 11?
11's going to be Sabrina Williams, who is the Chief People and Culture Leader at the New England Sports Network, otherwise known as NESN. Get ready for a look behind the scenes as we talk about human resources in the sports industry and how it really works. If you are a people person, Amy,
Yeah.
this one's, you got to listen to it.
I mean, and a lot of people don't equate human resources with a sports team. And you have human resources in every business, and they have them in sports. And it's a really cool area to work in. I'm excited about that.
I am too.
All right. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. And remember to follow us on all of our social platforms. The handle is at Girl Gig Podcast. You can listen to our podcast on your favorite podcast app or subscribe on YouTube because it's free. For Celeste Gehring, I'm Amy G. Until next time, go get that gig. Thanks for watching, everybody.